Good morning, students. In previous class, I have discussed about up to sieving methods or particle size determinations. Today, I have discussing about the sedimentation methods for particle size determinations. In these methods, we have determining the particle size of a suspensions or of a solid to create a suspensions up to 1 to 200 micrometers of particle size. In this method, we are using the Andreessen pipette apparatus for determination of particle size. In this apparatus consist of 550 ml of cylindrical vessels containing a 10 ml pipette sealed to a ground glass topper. When the pipette is placed in the cylinder, its lower tip is 20 cm below the surface. You have shown in the diagrams of surface of suspensions. So first you have to prepare 1 to 2% of suspension of the powder in a suitable medium. A deflocculating agent will help in uniform dispersions of the suspensions. Next, you transfer the suspensions into Andreessen vessels. Place the stopper and shake the vessel to distribute the suspension uniformly. Next, you have to remove the stopper and place the two-way pipette and securely suspend the vessel in a constant temperature water bath. At different time interval, 10 ml samples are withdrawn using the two-way stop cup and collected in a watch glass. Samples are evaporated and weighed. After weight, you can see the samples. The particle size, particles passes through the capillary, where is the momentary peak of resistance, which amplitude the peak and proportional of the particle size. Counting done by computer also, and you have to done by the particle size determination in the optical microscopy methods. Okay. Next come into the particle volume measurements. In the particle volume measurements, you have to determine the 0.5 to 500 micrometer of particle size range by using Coulter counter methods. In this type, the powder is suspended in an electrolyte solutions. The suspension is then made to flow through a short insulated capillary section between the two electrodes, and the resistance of the system is measured. When a particle passes through the capillary, there is a momentary peak in the resistance, because all time a electrical resistance is passed through the both electrodes. So when a particle is come out from the capillary or poured from the instruments, that time a disturbance of electrical voltage or electrical resistance. So this amplitude should be recorded in a detector and give a peak is proportional to the particle size, and the particles is automatically determined and calculated. The size also be calculated by the computer detectors. There you have one diagram, small diagram is there of the particle volume measurement of Coulter counters. Next come into the most important parameters of micromeritics, that is the flow properties of powders. The dosage form design is depending on the most of them of the flow properties of the powders. Powders may be free flowing or cohesive or sticky. So many of the common manufacturing problems are attributed to powder flow. If you using the cohesive powders, so that time your dosage form should be sticky in natures. Okay, so that is what will happen. The dosage form uniformity is disturbed in case of dosage form design, and the flow property of the dosage form and the dissolution property of the dosage form is decreases, so the drug release also be decreases. That time the action permeability action and absorption process of the drugs is also be decreases. So powder transfer to the large equipment such as hopper. The most of them problem in phase in case of tablet manufacturing process or the capsule filling process, because the capsule hopper or powder hopper is consist the most of them of granules or powder which is directly attached with the compression meshing of tablet. Free flowing powder is coming to the compression meshings into the punches. In between the punches, upper punch and lower punch, it's get compressed and give a optimum shape tablets. But if it is disturbed in case of hopper system, that time the less amount of powder is coming to the tablet punch, and that time the parameter defined tablet is not be manufactured by the process. Okay, so uneven powder flow which can disturb or increase the particles frictions with the dye wall, causing the lubrication problem, increase dust contaminations, risks during powder transfers. So those problems is occur due to the cohesive powders or increase concentrations using lubricant, glidant. Okay, if lubricant capacity is increases, that time also problem facing. Lubricant capacity is low, that time also problem is facing. There is a proper diagrams of flow property of powder that either show in hopper. The granules are filled, and there phenomenon is showing that first phenomenon is show that is when happen with these granules of the powder, that is the bridge holing or bridging or rat holings. It is happen when the flow property of powders. So flow property of powders storage, which for the example result in the caking tendency with vial or bag after shipping or storage time. Separation of small quantity of powders from bulk specialty just before the creation of individual doses, such as during tableting, encapsulating, vial filling, which affect the weight uniformity of the dose under the coverage. So you have to determine the flow property, which is excellent flow, which is good flow, which is poor flow. First we determining the powder flow properties, then you go for the doses for manufacturing. You know the powders flow property is poor, so you do not manufacturing the doses from by these powders. So you have to take the excellent flow property of powders, then you have to go for manufacturing. So different methods are there to determining the flow properties. First is Carr's compressibility index, Hausen ratio, and angle of repose. The first two methods you have to determining from the determination of true density and bulk density. You have already performed in your laboratory, and previously classes I have already said that. So after true density and tap density, you have to determine, you have easily calculated the Carr's index. Carr's index is basically, it is a compressibility index of a powders. A volume of powder is filled into a granulated or granulated glass cylinder and repeated tapped for known durations. So you have to getting the tap density by tapping measures. Then Carr's index you have to calculate it by using tap density minus flappy density. Flappy density means the which proportion of powder you have to take in the measuring cylinder, the first level of proportions, the first level of density, it is called as a flappy density, divided by the calculated tap density into 100. Now you have to determining the what is the excellent Carr's index value or compressibility values. Those compressibility value is excellent, so that time during compression of the powder, in case of tablet manufacturing, which was excellent compressibility getting by this process. So the compressibility index is between 5 to 15, it is called as excellent flow. 16 to 18 is a good, 19 to 21 is a fair, 22 to 35 is a poor, 36 to 40 it is a very poor, and if it is greater than 40 it is a extremely poor compressibility index of flow properties. Next come into the Hausen ratio. Hausen ratio is determined by tap density divided by bulk density. If Hausen ratio is related to the interparticular frictions of the particles, there one example that if 20% of Carr's index, which indicate the 1.25 is the Hausen ratio, indicate the good flow. Next, most popular and independent methods, it is the angle of repose, determinations of theta. The sample is poured into the horizontal surface and the angle of the resulting pyramid or the pile is measured. So the user normally select the final orifice which is powder flow slowly and reasonably constantly, which you already performed in your laboratory. So I am recapitulating the angle of repose, that angle of repose is less than 20, excellent flow, 20 to 30, good flow, 30 to 40, fairly possible, and is report greater than 40, it is a poor flow. Rougher and more irregular surface of the particles, the higher will be the angle of repose. Factors affecting flow properties of powders. Which are the factors? First is improvement of powder flowability by using particle size distributions. Particle size is sphere, it is not asymmetric, so it is affecting the increasing the flow property of powder. If it is asymmetrical, it is decreasing the flow property of powder depending on the particle size and distributions. Next is the particle shapes, symmetrical or spherical. Surface forces, okay, if moisture present in these powders, so that time the surface forces increases, friction is increases. Okay. Next in the flow activators. Flow activators means you have to increases the flow property by using some glidant like talc, lubricant like magnesium stearate, zinc stearate, okay, which is increases the flow activators. Factors affecting the flow properties of powders. Alteration particle size and distributions. Alteration particle shape and structures. Alteration of surface forces and formulations. Additives means addition of flow activators. The factors affecting the flow properties of powders. What are the factors? First in the particle size and distributions. So there is a certain particle size at which powder's flow ability is optimum. Coarse particles are more preferred than fine because it is less cohesive. Size distributions can also be altered to improve flowability by removing a portions of fine particle fractions or by increasing the proportions of coarse particles such as occurs in granulations. Next come into the particle shape and structures. Generally, more spherical particles have better flow properties than the irregular particles. Already said that the spherical particles are obtained by spray drying, crystalline coagglomerations or crystallization process. Okay. So particle shape and structures, in case of structures, particles with very rough surface will be more cohesive and have a greater tendency to interlock and smooth surface particles. So you have to choose the spherical particles in case of dosage form design, which have more flow properties than the irregular particles. Factors affecting the flow properties of powder by alteration of surface forces. Reductions of electrolytic charges can improve the powder flowability. Electrostatic charges can be reduced by altering process conditions to reduce frictional contacts. Moisture content of particles greatly affect the powder's flowability. Absorbed surface moisture flames tend to increase bulk density and reduce porosity. So you have to properly dry this powder, go for dosage form design. Drying the particles will be reduce the cohesive and improve the flowability of powders. Hygroscopic powders stored and processed under low humidity chamber or conditions. Last is the formulations additives, addition of flow activators. Flow activators are commonly referred to as a glidants. Flow activators are improve the flowability of powders, so by reducing the addition and cohesiveness like talc, starch, magnesium stearate, zinc stearate. So those are the parameters in case of introduction of micromeritics, which can help to design a proper dosage form without any affecting the disturbing parameters, which can help to derive or distribute the particle size and flow properties of the powder, which can easily use in dosage form design which increases the rate of dissolutions, drug uniformity, dosage form uniformity, and the drug absorption and drug actions.